and by just talking a little bit about how what's your philosophy on metrics, and how does Frito-Lay approach measuring all of the spend that it does on marketing?
You know, it's interesting. I think in the new world of marketing, you know, I always say to everyone, now more than ever, consumers, we know, are empowered, right? And they have seen it all, and boy, are they jaded. And so now more than ever, we have to create unbelievable and unpredictable marketing. Things that have never been seen before. Consumers feel like, oh my God, first ever. And now more than ever, we have to make sure that all of the returns from that unpredictable marketing deliver predictable results.
So because some people say you just can't measure everything. I mean, come on, Anne, that's unfair.
You know what? You actually can, but not everything can be measured equally with the same precision as everything else. And I think we're living in a world where the new oil is data. And as marketers, if we don't get comfortable about embracing predictive analytics as a way to drive the art of what we do, we're going to become dinosaurs very, very quick.
So you know, you have the Fritos, the Nacho, not the Nacho, sorry, the Doritos, the Nachos, and all those lovely onion things that
Funyuns.
You might have Nachos, you might own that very soon, at least after I've finished. There's a lot of vanity metrics out there, right? But you know, so we at The Economist, we say we have a million Facebook followers, and but that's good, right?
That's lovely.
It is. So,
to a certain extent.
Why?
Well, think about a relationship, okay? If you're going to spend a lot of money on getting to know someone, and you get a bunch of people to go out with you, that's really nice. Don't you want that to turn into a date?
Absolutely.
I mean, of course, we're both married, but I'm just saying figuratively, you have to think about, it isn't about just the vanity measures, it's how does the vanity measures then ultimately translate to conversion?
Okay.
And it's what I call this balance of the art and the science, right? The vanity measures are a wonderful way to understand reach and engagement. But you have to then ultimately get to, are you converting for sales? And you can't look at one without the other. If you're just looking for conversion, you might be looking at a lot of one-night stands, right? You got it.
One-night stands with my Doritos.
Well, let's not go there, but we could if you want.
No, let's leave that.
But the issue is, the quality of the conversion is just as important as the conversion. And that's why you have to look at both measures.
So how do you measure quality of conversion? What does that mean?
So we look at it at a four kind of stage process, right? So we look at first, what is the reach? So we look at measures like, how many people have you reached with your particular campaign or social media campaign, et cetera. Then you want to look at engagement, okay? So then you want to start, okay, what are the likes? What are all the things that people are willing to, the engagement that you're getting.
Okay.
Then you want to look at, are you creating impulse? So if you've created an offer coming out of that, right? Are they viewing your offers? What's the click-through rate? So then you're really getting into that stage of, have you created me to want to think about it? And then finally, which is the most important one, the stage of conversion. So if you've put offers out there, what's your redemption rates? Have you actually created a purchase off of an offer? And if you're sophisticated enough, there are very advanced tools, regression-based analysis, that will actually help you understand, are you driving the kind of effectiveness that you need from those measures? So
you have sort of reach, as many in as possible, engagement, how much they engage with the brand, depth, impulse, conversion.
Yes.
Can you then sort of drill down? I mean, how far do you drill down in terms of saying, was this a mobile lead? Was this because most people say, oh, I can't do that. Is that something you guys do?
It's really interesting. I would tell you maybe 3-4 years ago, probably people were said that you couldn't do it. But there are a lot of companies out there, and I know many of my peers are out here today, that do use sophisticated regression-based modeling. And what more and more companies are doing is they're now creating the tracking of these social measurements and creating kind of the longitudinal data to start putting that into those regression-based models. And what we've learned is social is just too big to measure in and of itself. To your point, you need to break it up, mobile versus search versus the various aspects of it. And when you have the longitudinal data, you can actually start seeing what of those metrics that you can isolate is actually driving increase sales versus your other mediums that you've been measuring.
So can you give us like a concrete example of a promotion you've done where you've actually, and talk us through and take us through those metrics?
Absolutely. So you guys heard of a brand called Lay's potato chips, anyone? Okay. So last year we asked America to tell us what should be the next flavor of Lay's. And so we put a call out to America. What's really interesting is, and here's the word social, by the way. Can we just talk about that word for just a second?
Absolutely.
Guys, at the end of the day, we're talking about human behavior, okay? What do people want more than anything? They want to be loved. They want to have value in the world. They want to understand what their identity is, what their identity within social groups are, right? That's what social's all about. Understanding that, we created this, we lifted and shifted. It was something we did in the UK many, many years ago.
Flew with it, right, yeah.
And what we did in the United States was we partnered with Facebook. And we said, okay, look, you tell us your idea for Lay's, and then immediately, and we had to tell a little story. My grandma made the best meatloaf, so I want meatloaf on a chip, whatever. Instantaneously.
That was mine. I didn't win.
Maybe next year. Okay, so, and instantaneously, you got a Lay's bag created, and it said, your meatloaf flavor, and there it was. And it immediately went into your news feed, immediately.
So you're measuring that, at that level, you're measuring just the number of ones that go into the news feed.
That's going into the news feed. Now, from a social perspective, you just created another reason to talk to your social circle. I mean, how many times are you going to tell them you went to the bathroom, right? You need new content.
A lot.
So all of a sudden, you're taking a little bit of who you are, you've put it into a flavor, and Lay's just goes along for the ride. It's just another excuse for people to talk to each other about each other.
Okay.
Then we created the type of what I'll call mechanisms that allowed that social conversation to take place. I could do showdowns with you. You might have meatloaf, but I had chicken curry.
Nothing.
I'm telling you.
You're not winning.
But then among your friend circle, you do a
online,
little...
so you're pinging these things around.
Now you're creating engagement, yeah? Now, here's the best part. Because it's Facebook, I can also tell, do you like Walmart? Or Marks and Spencer's,
right.
yeah? Or
so you can see...
And then I can connect to the retail data space and create the linkage between relationship and actual conversion.
Okay.
Yeah?
So how does that work? I mean, tell me exactly how does that work?
We literally partner with all our retailer partners.
So they track through.
Exactly. And if you had Walmart as a if you're a fan of Walmart, you might get $1 off because you participated in this Lay's promotion, and Walmart's going to ask you to come into their store.
That's how.
When we went to the voting phase, when we said, okay, now we've got 3 finalists, now vote, if you voted through the Walmart data site versus our data site, we gave you an offer that was more than the general public got. So creating those engagements into conversion is you're now designing for that entire journey, that entire demand journey.
Got it. And when, with the retailer, that sort of relationship, are there other things you can do with retailers right now that weren't possible before that help you get to these metrics you want?
Unbelievable. I mean, retailers right now are just unbelievable sources of analytical understanding. Their shopper data cards, their loyalty cards, they know more about probably the people we're trying to sell to than we do. And so our ability to partner with them and really understand what a retailer's problem to solve is, I mean, each one of them today are massively being encouraged by unbelievable competition in their space. Creating loyalty, and when you have brands like ours that actually are traffic builders, it gives you a very powerful tool to start working with your retailer's data to really create that conversion. And
how easy was it to sort of get data to flow across and then metrics to come out of that data between all these retailers and yourselves?
It's different retailers are at different stages.
Yeah.
Some were like, I want to learn with you, and they're like all in. Then there's like, yeah, what are you going to pay me for it? So it depends.
Yeah.
But that's why creating a really good retailer relationship makes it more about us creating the frontier together as opposed to it's just another transaction.
And the metrics that you're trying, I mean, presumably for the Do Us a Flavor, which apparently is running again this year, I think. We'll come to that at the end. But for that, did you create your own algorithms and your own sort of way of tracking things through, or did you just take stuff off the shelf?
Both. Yeah,
okay.
Both.
So what did you take off the shelf and what did you design?
When taking off the shelf was just basically the measurement of the engagement type stuff.
Basic analytics.
Basic analytics that's out there. But two things I think we started developing, which is that conversion. We called it a little innovation. My shopper marketing team created tools called opt-in that allowed kind of these broader programs to be customized by retailer. And we created digital toolkits that allowed it to be very boilerplate, kind of freedom in a framework.
Okay.
The other thing that we had to develop is when you get that level of submissions, last year was about 3.8 million submissions, how does one person go through all of them? So we needed to write analytical algorithms to be able to not only understand what flavors were coming, but how much of them were mainstream, how much of them were niche, what was going to create more breadth of appeal versus depth of appeal. So we learned a lot as we went through this process.
Got it. So this year you'll be able to put a lot more analytics behind it.
Yeah.
Are there any other areas that you point out that you've worked on where you've sort of developed analytics like this that would help the audience understand your sort of philosophy to metrics?
You know, I think the biggest thing that's going on in our industry today is that if we're going to succeed, it isn't about different functions. It isn't marketing versus sales versus finance versus IT. It's the amalgamation of all of those spaces coming together in service of the consumer or the shopper, whoever your end user is. And one of the things that has been a big issue, which is in this world where we need more and more investment behind reaching our consumer, how do you convince a CFO who's all about the bottom line about getting him there? And this ability to really drive the science into the art and saying, look, if you give me $1, I'm going to give you 4 back. You know, that ability to measure and deliver is so critical in our business today. And today, because of our ability to be predictive in our analytics, I literally can tell you the return on not only a Lay's ad, but a Lay's ad that is print versus out of home versus a Doritos digital space and mobile. I can get to that level of sophistication, and I can get to the sophistication of predicting what I will deliver. Yeah. And when I don't, they take my money away.
That's so CFOs for you. They're shocking.
I'm just telling you. But so far, no one's taken any money away from me. So I'm just saying.
That's good. And I hear you're building a 6-story chip dispenser. South by Southwest.
We started it 3 years. A team came to me and said, Ann, we want to build a 6-story vending machine at South by Southwest. We want that to be the bold stage. Yeah, we want to bring in Snoop Dogg. I was like, and how's that going to sell more Doritos? And they said, Ann, it is one of the most tweeted events in America. And for our target, and that's the other thing about social, how does that strategy fit into what the brand is about? And when you think about the millennial consumer, and for them it isn't about TV watching, it's about what I learned from my friend because he thought it was cool.
Right.
So we put the tracking in place, and we said, okay, I'm going to invest. This, as a CMO, I said, I'm going to invest in a couple of experiments. And in this world, you've got to experiment.
Yes.
And we did. And that's how it was born.
So did you apply metrics to those, or did you say, no, they're just straight out experiments?
No, metrics, they were metrics ahead of time.
Okay.
What were we going to measure? Okay. What tracking were we going to put in place? We're now in our 3rd year. It is one of our biggest revenue generating pieces of, other than Craft Super Bowl that we do for Super Bowl, which now is in its 8th year and breaking records still. But this thing is out tonight. We've got Lady Gaga and on the bold stage, and the only way you can get in is if you do a bold challenge that Doritos and Lady Gaga have given you. Otherwise, you can't buy tickets to this thing.
Give us an example of a bold challenge.
So there was this one consumer who said, I've got to go, I've got to go. And we're like, listen, what's your bold challenge? She said, what are you scared of? And she goes, I'm scared of heights. We said, okay, you got to jump down a 50-foot big board, and if you do, we'll give you tickets to Lady Gaga. And she did.
I hope there was something at the bottom of it, otherwise...
We had a couple of harnesses in place.
Oh, okay.
But here's the thing. She then became my advertising.
Right.
Because she is now all over the digital space, advertising Doritos and what Doritos did for her.
Fantastic. Great stories. I'd like to open to the floor. Questions for Anne? Metrics. Metrics makes marvels.
One hand over here.
Oh, there's one over here. Sorry, I do apologize. It's the lights here. They're slightly bright. Could we pass that down? There we go.
Hi, my name is Karen Fahey, and I am representing Cabot Cooperative here. We're based in Vermont. And I would ask you, if you were walking into a company on a shoestring budget, all of the social is important, and yet measuring can be a very pricey initiative. What would you suggest?
You know, I think it goes back to social at the end of the day is just like any other marketing tactic. It all applies, right? And what I say to, you know, across PepsiCo, we have many countries that, again, are very small countries that the data is not even available there. So a very similar situation. And what I'd say to them all the time is use rigor, just the rigor of thinking and good questions in terms of understanding is what you're doing rooted in the right thing. So for instance, when you're using social media, are you using it as a tool that brings about why your brand, its brand's position? Is it in service to a big idea that's going to convert consumers to a behavior that's going to drive business at the end of the day? It's all around those basic questions, and if you can't link the question to the answer, then you know you're probably going wrong. And of course, there's just so much, I would tell you, information out there today that just basics and principles of how you should approach what you're doing and making sure that everyone in your organization understands that. And understanding that linkage between what we call all the way from media is that thread of the insight all the way to where you ultimately sell your product, whether that be at a store shelf, whether that be in a click environment, it doesn't matter. But I say to people all the time, guys, just use common sense. Ask the right questions.
I think it can be very revelating. Sometimes the organization doesn't actually know, and actually putting the metrics, all of a sudden it's like it reveals. It's like, oh, that's well, we shouldn't be doing that. We should be doing this, right?
That's exactly right.
So I think just making the first steps and starting to drill down can be really, really helpful.
It's just a really simple.
Thank you. It's a lovely question. I would take one over this side, and then we'll come back over here. So there's a mic coming for you. Here it comes. There we go.
Marketers used to love social because it was so cheap. And now Facebook is starting to look like any other media company, and they want you to pay big dollars to get that reach.
Yeah.
How has that changed your ROI models?
You know, at the end of the day, what we try to look at is what's the right medium for the right activity. So I'll give you an example. Crash the Super Bowl for Doritos. That is what people don't understand is that's a 6-month program, right? The day of the game is interesting, but that's really not what it's about. So it starts with a call to action of getting people to give us ads, okay? Who do I then take into account? Yeah, I get the Facebooks to get the reach, but then I get Pinterest involved. Why? Because it's about creativity. And people are looking for talent to be in their commercials or ideas. And so understanding the right medium for what you want to accomplish, meaning the day of. Man, I got major things going on with Twitter because then it's all about the water cooler talk about the ads, right? And it goes back to this, which is when you design for human behavior, then you understand what medium you should bring in, and then understand, is the ROI worth it based on the expectation of what behavior it creates? And there are times where Facebook, even at its current cost, may be worth it. And we'll come back to, in a second, Lay's Do Us a Flavor.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you get it right, it's the juice is worth the squeeze.
That's great. The juice, that's going in my next article. Okay, the question over here. Can we get the mic over here?
And great conversation. Eric Porras from Rocket Fuel. I don't know if I can follow up the juice is worth the squeeze, but I will ask. Digital and social today, so from an insights basis, I had a chance to speak with Becky Frankowitz from your team a few weeks ago about her relationship with Costco. Have digital insights given you a leg up on retailers over the last 5 years? It's all of this social listening and all of this environmental listening giving you a better opportunity to have influence with whether it be Costco, Walmart, or any of your major distribution outlets?
I like to say I wish I could say yes. Unfortunately, I think the answer is no. I think retailers today are so sophisticated. They're probably more sophisticated when it comes to social listening and digital understanding than even we are. But what I will tell you is there are things we know that they don't, and there are things they know that we don't. And the question is how do you create partnerships that it's mutually beneficial on both sides? And what I tell you is you know, a company like Costco, for their shopper, they know their shopper better than anyone else I know out there, which is very different than a shopper at Walmart, right? And so the bigger question I ask when I go do my top-to-tops with my retailers is, what is your specific problem to solve? And based on what kind of demand I can satisfy, where is that natural partnership? I think in today's world, if we are cookie cutter to everybody, we're going to get lost. You're getting lost in the middle. It's about being able to take your scale and making it flexible such that you have a very tailored approach, whether it's your retailer customer or in the digital space, getting more tailored and sophisticated and targeted with your consumer.
I love when we say there are things they know that we don't, and things we know. You're like the Donald Rumsfeld of the potato chip industry. The known unknowns and the unknown unknowns.
Never been called that.
There you go. Sorry, I hope that was a compliment. Time for one more question, please. Don't be bashful. Oh, one here.
Hi, I'm Ashley Moak from Google and YouTube. I love what you said before about thinking about social as just getting down to, what are human beings inherently looking to do with social platforms? And I'm wondering, to what extent has FOMO marketing been a part of your strategy? And if so, what ROI are you seeing from that just inherent human behavior or
Great
fear?
question.
It's a great question because I'll tell you, the trend and the advent of FOMO has really created some really cool stuff. And what's really interesting is I work for a bunch of folks who I love dearly.
Is it pay rise time?
But they're like, what's a FOMO? And I'm like, oh, my. And of course, they control the purse strings. And what I tell you is two things. One, educating not only your marketers to be able to go after it is one thing, but educating the people who control the purse strings is another. And in FOMO marketing, Doritos is another great example, right? What I've done is I've taken my senior leadership and I take them to these FOMO events so they can emotionally experience what this is all about, right? I'll give you one example, and I use this in the company to get people to understand. So when we did South by Southwest the second year, I said, I'm not doing any advertising. I'm not doing any TV advertising. How do I get consumers to talk about us? So here's what we did. The day of, it was LL Cool J. The day of, we went to LA. We just walked up to random people on the street and said, there's a car waiting right there. You can't call anybody. Do you want to get in that car? And I'm going to take you to an unbelievable, never been done before experience. And we went through 60 people. They're like, no. We got one guy. He's like, okay, all right, I'm ready.
Oh, boy.
We put him in a limo. Limo drives to a private hangar. There's a corporate jet waiting. He gets on the private Learjet. Of course, there's bags of Doritos everywhere. He's like, where are we going? We're like, you're going to Austin. You don't need a passport. He lands in Austin. Of course, there's a limo waiting. He is driven straight to South by Southwest to the Doritos Bold stage, and he goes, get on stage. He's like, why? He goes, you're going to introduce LL Cool J.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah? That thing hit what he advertised us for us on Doritos.
Right.
I couldn't pay to go do.
You're right. I could go on all day. It's fabulous. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. The Do Us a Flavor competition is closed, so don't try and get in it. It's no more. Yeah, I am putting in later on. All right, no, it's not really closed. It's my chance to sort of corner the market. Do you want to tell them what's going on?
Yeah, so guys, last year, we had about 3.8 million submissions. It was like 4x what we thought we were going to get. But here was the insight from last year. Do you know why more people didn't submit? Because they weren't foodies. We're like, what? Do you like food? Submit. So we changed the approach that we did this year. We are about halfway through. The average submissions I'm getting is 400,000 a day. By the time the submission will close April 5th, we're forecasting about 20 million submissions.
Wow.
So when you understand the data and the insight and can match the two, it can blow the doors off your business.
My fish and chips is going to win. I'm convinced. I am convinced. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Ann Mukherjee.
Thank you very much.
You were terrific. Thank you very much.